Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying.
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy, the show that talks 100% LA Galaxy soccer. We're glad you could join us. Now it's time to sit back and relax as your hosts navigate through the twisting, turning, but never boring world of the five-time MLS Cup champion, LA Galaxy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Thursday, May 16th. The LA Galaxy coming off of a 2-2 draw with Minnesota after a draw at home with Real Salt Lake. Their road trip continues as they head towards Charlotte. We're going to get you ready for that Charlotte game. We're going to talk about Real Salt Lake, plus we have salary information and all sorts of fun stuff. In case you missed it on Monday, I lost my voice. It is now back. I have a cough now, which is usually what replaces that, so we'll see how far we get along in all this fun stuff. Helping me do all that, we're glad to have him back. It's the Hammer himself, Mr. Eric, the Portuguese Hammer Vieira. Eric, how's it going, bud?
It's going well. I have my voice, never lost it. So
Good.
Again, one of those things you take for granted, but hope you're feeling well. Hope the family is finally, it's passed all the way around, right? Everyone's got all the germs out of the way and we're ready to move on and have a good summer. Is that the way that works?
We're at the point now where I give it back to somebody, and then it goes round robin.
Cycle number two.
Yeah, cycle number two. Because my wife and I were just talking not too long ago about how we were dodging the sickness this way. You know, winter was actually pretty calm. We were like, hey, look at us. I think maybe we're maturing, right? You know, you do the whole thing.
Immunities.
Yeah, right. And then the kid goes down for like a week and a half. My wife goes down for, a good 5-6 days. And I was like, I got it. I'm good. I dodged it. I just basically didn't hang out with them. I was like, I'll see you guys later. I'll, sleep in the other room, do all that fun stuff. And I still ended up getting it. So yeah, that's where it is.
Fun times. Well, you're here. You're here. You have your voice. It's a Christmas miracle. We're ready to talk. We're 2 games. We got
2 games.
A double pod here, a recap and a preview all in one. Two pods for the price of one, half the calories, twice the meat. I don't know. I got
clearly twice the meat, especially on this sandwich. So an interesting game with the Charlotte game. I will say this. I will start this podcast off by saying the exact same thing I said before the LA Galaxy and Minnesota kicked off. Right, which was, it doesn't matter what they do, it will not be as more exciting than Philadelphia versus New York City. And I was correct because our friend Raquinho, right, our Raquinho friend out there running the field. By the way, this is an actual Topps card. I actually asked, I was like, they better make this card. I want to buy it, and I want you to know that sometimes you think you want something and you want them to sell it to you, and then when you look at it, you're like, it's probably not worth that much. They like $8. I was like, it's probably not worth that much. So
this is the salary cap show and the budget show. So this is a good, what do you get value on your return? And so
right.
I agree. The fact that it's available to buy, I love it. I love that it exists.
Right.
But I think they set the price right at that. It makes you wonder. It's not so cheap that it's an automatic buy, but it's at that price. Like, do I really want a Raccoon MLS Topps card? Is that, or, for someone who I've recently started collecting cards, haven't dabbled into MLS yet. Do I want my first MLS Topps card to be Raquinho? I liked Wayne Raccoony. I thought that was a better name than Raquinho, but I can go with it.
Because clearly they were like, this raccoon has escaped from DC United. I would like to point out to everybody that not too long ago, I was at Dignity Hill Sports Park after everything had closed, nice and dark, and I ran into a raccoon friend. whenever I was there. So, like most places where there's an abundance of sometimes stuff scattered around, you will attract the little varmints here and there. So very good. Let's get to some super chats before we get too far into this. Lucio, $2 super chat. Fire Vanny. Just kidding. We need a win this weekend. I mean, if you fired him, bet the Galaxy will probably win. I mean, that's usually a way to fire everybody up, right?
Well,
I mean, if you needed one win, that might be a way, right?
Yeah, it could. Or if you want to ask someone else to coach the team, then that's one way to get a win as well. I don't know if you heard the hot mic for the Portland San Jose game where that guy said,
Steven,
you want to coach the team?
Steven, you want to coach the
get
team?
Any worse?
Steven, you want to coach the team? If you haven't seen that, just go on Twitter.
Look that
it's
up.
there somewhere.
Go look up Portland San Jose blooper, and someone's either getting fired or disciplined or making an apology this week, because that was definitely not supposed to be picked up on the mic. But yeah, who knows? Maybe a coaching change, and then you rehire him for the following week. Yeah, just for the fake emotion.
Just ride the roller coaster.
Lucio. Yeah.
Lucio, $2 super chat. Also, shout out to my son Javi. Javi, shout out. Glad to have you aboard. Glad you guys are listening. Philip, by the way, would like to give us a $2 super chat and let us know that Greg Vanny just subbed us both out. So
right,
we're
enough.
out. We're out.
Right.
We're
Thank
gone.
you.
I'll just go this way. You go that
clap
way.
it up for the fans.
Thank you. Little tip of the hat.
We have 10 seconds, so we got to move quick.
That's right. So we appreciate that. So let's get into this Minnesota game. I mean, I'm going to say this: if you would have said at halftime that the Galaxy would have tied that game 2-2, you would have taken it in a heartbeat, because the first half was abysmal. What'd you see there?
It's the same thing, and your initial reaction of not knowing where to begin and kind of shaking your body, the body language, if you're not watching on YouTube, I think spoke volumes, because that's exactly how I felt about the game as well. We talked about it with RSL, with where they were in the standings and how dangerous they looked around the league. That a point at home isn't the greatest thing in the world when you think about the quality of the opponent. You can talk yourself into being happy with a draw in advance if that was the case. I think that's the same thing with Minnesota. Seeing where they are in the standings with the games in hand, you're going midweek away, a lot of the difficulties that can go with it. And you say, if you offered me, a point here, I'd say, yeah, I'd probably take it. And then after the first half, you say, well, this does not look good. And with the lineup that they started with the rotated starters, you think, well, I would definitely take a tie in the second after seeing that first half. But then when you saw the second half, and then I thought Ricky Puig was the one who kind of took the game by the scruff of the neck in the second half, and really inspired them to that game where they flipped it on his head. I thought the sub of Joveljic was great, and he immediately impacted the game. Fagundes was also just hot coming off the bench. So I thought, okay, we're going to steal points here.
Yep.
And then when you saw Minnesota bring in their starters that they're resting, maybe a little bit nervous, and then of course we got subbed by Vanny right now. So I think that's what the topic of the chat is going to be. The Vanny subs is going to raise the questions, but I don't think the subs were the issue. I don't know if you want to pause there, but I put this more on the McCarthy mistake. We've been talking about set pieces being kind of the Achilles heel for this Galaxy team, and the defense being not good enough in terms of the goals conceded. But to me, I've been someone who's more critical of McCarthy, and maybe fair or not, he's had some great saves and come up with some great shot stops. But to me, the distribution is something that comes up, that it's become a little bit of a liability. You saw it poke its head in this game with a very close turnover early on. And then and I don't know how, there's no delicate way to say it, but I'm just coming right and say, this is the third time that I've seen him, cry about not getting a foul in the box. And I think the game tape is out on McCarthy. If you crowd him, if you nag him, then you're going to be able to score on a set piece. And so I don't think that's a good thing. I think one of these things about keepers, I forget who said it. I think it was someone talking about Brad Guzan. They said, because goalkeepers are a different breed. They said, if you toss Brad Guzan a tin can, he'd eat it. He'd be like a billy goat. He'd just chew it and eat it, because that's how goalkeepers are built. And I think that's, for someone like McCarthy, who's so vocal and seems like such a leader and such a locker room guy, run out with both fists and punch that thing away. Take a guy's head off on your way, storming out of the box. He's sitting there and waiting to get a foul. I've seen it too many times to where it's becoming a pattern, and that to me is more of an issue than the subs or the defenders that he brought in.
Yeah, let's talk about the lineup real quick, just so we can understand and set place. Because
I knew I went too far. I went too far. I should have paused sooner.
There's just some changes here that you sort of have to take account of, right? And obviously there was some rotation in here. The big deal here was Cáceres comes in for Neal. You then had Miguel Berry in for Joveljic, and we sort of expected that. Greg Vanney told us ahead of the road trip that it was unlikely he was going to start all 3 games. And so you sort of knew what to expect from that. I still think that there's an opportunity here to start Diego Fagundes in that spot, and I'm all for that. Let me know whenever that happens. I'll be right in on it. Because if you watch the goal that Diego Fagundes scored, he scored it from the center of the field. He scored it making a run that Miguel Berry wouldn't have made the whole day. Listen, I think somebody said there's some moratorium on Miguel Berry slander because he scored the game time goal in the RSL game. It's like, nah, that's not how it works. My eyes are still going to tell me that he's not playing well, right? So I'm not going to just sit here. He was less than involved. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, Joveljic can go and not be involved, Eric, and then you're still getting something out of him. You still see his runs, and you still see some stuff.
He's drawing out defenders.
Right, but what happened immediately whenever Joveljic comes on the field and Berry goes off is all of a sudden they start combining through Joveljic. There's space that starts opening up. And listen, the first half LA Galaxy were absolute crap, which is crazy because they were doing almost the exact same thing they did in the second half, which is it's hard to wrap your brain around this because, and I did it too, but I went back and watched highlights again. The Galaxy were so good at getting in between spaces in Minnesota and actually finding space there. And then one of 2 things was happening, and it was happening on a consistent basis. They were hitting a pass a half step too soon, which meant that the lanes weren't clear, the lanes were clogged, and Minnesota looked like they were the giant brick wall that nobody could get through right in that final third. And then the worst part of that is they were hitting shots about a half step too late, allowing defenders to close and the whole deal. So all you saw was the Galaxy not getting any shots on goal, which is what happened. It looked like they generated no offense. It looked like they were having no success.
And it made the Minnesota defense look better also because everything looked like a block, even though it was more poor shot selection and poor passing.
Yeah, absolutely. So you go through that. Now, I talked after the game. I talked to Greg Vanney. I said, what did you sort of think of halftime adjustments? And I will say this: I put the LA Galaxy up against any team in Major League Soccer in terms of second half adjustments. The Galaxy, unfortunately, look somewhat pedestrian in first halves whenever they're not playing well, and then usually can come in and turn it on in the second half. And there's usually adjustments that are made by Greg Vanney. There's subs that come in that change things. There's a whole bunch of things that happen that really, I think, make the Galaxy a very dangerous team in the second half. And if you overlook that and close your eyes and put your head into the sand, then you're not understanding what is happening. But my big issue is the babysitting that needs to happen for this team. When are they going to figure it out? I knew what they were doing. If I know what you're doing, you should be able to figure it out. I'm not smart. You're much smarter than me. You're professional athletes. You should be able to figure it out. And the same thing that Greg Vanney said at halftime, and at least that's what he said. He told us, a little more patience on the pass, right? Be able to open up those lanes a little bit. Don't look for the killer ball every single time. Be a little more patient, which is crazy. When this team doesn't play well, Eric, it's because usually they move the ball too slow and they're impatient. And when those 2 things happen, they suck. They're not good.
They're almost overactive. And I think that's actually been the issue with Paintsill the last couple of games. Is he's someone on last week's show, I was saying he's the team MVP. And then, 2 games later, it's flipped. Puig has kind of leapfrogged him on that. And it's not that, Paintsill, these 2 games were leaps and bounds terrible, because I think if he, moves a ball, a quarter inch to the right or to the left, we're having a whole different conversation. But I think the separation between Puig and Paintsill was not that far. So all it took was a couple bad performances and Puig surpassed him, and we're talking about small increments here. One thing that you mentioned that I had in my notes also is if I were playing against the LA Galaxy, I would know how I want to play against them. And so it's one of those things. If the team knows, at what point are they going to step up for that? And I know Vanney, get some heat from the fan base, and there's some impatience with 3 draws in a row when it looks like points could have been more points could have been had than they got. And I understand that, and I think that's valid. But it's one of those things. If the message is the same, but when it works, you give Vanney credit for putting those in positions. But if it's not working, you can't blame Vanney for all of it either. At some point, the players need to follow the advice and kind of fit into that mold. So I agree with you that it's more about execution than it is game plan and design. And one more thing that I'll mention about Barry, everyone was kind of glad that he had his moment, but that doesn't change the data that it has in front of us. And the one thing that I will mention is where we've seen, and not that Barry's had tons of success, but where we see where he can be effective is in that RSL game, coming off the bench late when you're going against tired legs, when you don't have to worry about creating chances and it's just kind of sending someone in, for a moment. I think that's where you bring him in. Him as a starter isn't going to be as effective. But you saw the difference when Joveljic is in there. You're able to rely on him as an option. Fagundes, if he's in that role, then you can have that interchange between the wings with Paintsill and Peck, and then you can kind of figure all those different things out. It brings a different dynamic to the team. And so to Kevin Baxter's point, when you ask about depth, this is depth, going and surviving in the first half and then bringing in someone like Joveljic and Fagundes to come in and seal the deal and make things happen. So I think the team is deep in a way. It's just a matter of using that depth that's going to benefit them and manufacture more points.
Yeah, there's certainly something to that. And, I think the big mistake here is dropping points to RSL. I mean, otherwise,
is it a mistake or did they go up against a good team?
They did, but you shouldn't.
They should have done better.
You shouldn't have allowed RSL to score first. You have to score first at home. You have to be in a position of driving that bus, and you weren't. You were never in that position, right?
They were in position to those Paintsill opportunities.
Right.
They were in position. They just didn't take advantage of it.
But I mean, actually on the scoreboard, you have to be in control of those situations, right? It's like a lot of that first half, I thought the Galaxy actually were in control. Possession showed that they were in control. 0 shots on goal. It was the end product that was missing. And so you're sort of sitting there going, okay, what's happening on, what am I seeing? What's happening? How are we doing this thing, right? So, for me, if you're looking at what you were trying to get out of these 3 games, you're supposed to get 3 points against RSL. Is that realistic considering how good? Listen, one of the things I think I've learned the most from so far, Eric, is what the Western Conference is. The Western Conference is a bunch of, let's put it this way. The Western Conference has some bad teams in it. I don't think there's any great teams in it. I think all those teams that are sitting right now anywhere between 1st and 8th are about the same team. And
there's
so
no one terrifying. There's not a inner Miami like who's on the Eastern Conference who's just running away with everybody.
Right. And really, when you look at Miami, the only reason they're running away with it right now is because they've sort of had that game in hand the entire time, right? Which is
also true.
Which
but they are giving.
They are very good.
A clinic.
Yeah, they are. They are whenever they play well for sure. But I think that's what I learned in the Western Conference is everybody's just sort of around the same, especially when you talk about the RSLs, the Minnesotas. I guess we could go through the Western Conference real quick. Minnesotas, LAFC's right there. Colorado, I still don't know about Colorado, but they're right there. LA, even Austin, who's in 6th, isn't that much separated from most of those teams. I would put Vancouver.
Points, isn't that?
Yeah, I would put Vancouver in that list too. You sort of drop a little bit when you get to Houston right now. I don't feel great about Houston, but I think they can be a dangerous team, right? St. Louis, maybe a little underrated where they're at. And then you got Seattle, Portland, Dallas, Kansas City, San Jose. There's some others in this, but nobody feels like they're out of touch of anything. Salt Lake, who's 4 points up on second place, which the Galaxy are basically tied for second in all of this. Again, nobody should be panicked about that. When you look at that, they're not... Okay, so they're 4 points. They're 4 points clear. Are they 4 points better than everybody? No, I don't think they're 4 points better than everybody. I think they're right around the same as everybody else. So I don't see any clear standouts. So that's what I've learned about the Western Conference. It's very even, which means picking up little points, doing little things. That's going to be important. So I don't hate this. I went and actually looked across Major League Soccer because the Galaxy have played 8 games on the road. They're about ready to play their 9th game on the road whenever they play against Charlotte. That is on the heavy side. Nobody has played more than 8, but there were only a few teams that have played 8. Okay, so if you go on the Eastern Conference, you have 2 teams who have played 8 games on the road. The only team that's better than the LA Galaxy in record is the New York Red Bulls. 8 games on the road, they have 23 total points. The Galaxy, 8 games on the road, 21 total points. So just 2 points behind New York Red Bulls in terms of their total points. Montreal has played 8 games. The Galaxy have played 8 games. Seattle has 8 games on the road. San Jose has 8 games on the road. Those are the teams that have played 8 games on the road. Again, unbalanced in terms of how it is. Now, that should mean that the Galaxy have some home games coming up, which we know they do, but they have to play another game on the road on Charlotte. This takes them further, basically, from that equilibrium. These points aren't bad, is what I'm trying to tell you, especially on the road. They should. The Galaxy have to do something I'm not convinced they can do, which is win home games, right? Yeah. And that's the next part of this. We can talk about all the road games and all the stuff that you want to look at all you want, but unless they start winning home games whenever they have home games, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you can't be satisfied with road points if you're not getting the 3 points at home. That's what it all comes down to. And I mentioned last week, looking at the week is like a group of points. So looking at this stretch as a group of 9 points.
Right.
So right now you have 2. So now what you've done is you've forced this hand to where to make this a successful 3-game run, you need to get a win at Charlotte.
You want that win at Charlotte.
So that basically replaces the RSL win. And so it makes you play a little bit differently. And then that impacts, it could impact schedules down the road. They do have a week, in between games this time. So I don't see any, need to rest or do squad rotation unless it's based on the game that just happened.
Right.
But I think you go for it and it changes the mentality a little bit. And going back to that jumble, and this is what popped into my mind. 1, after the Minnesota game, and 2, seeing the standings with all these teams jumbled up, is not that the bloom is coming off the rose, but the Galaxy started the season well and was sitting in that, supporter tied for the supporter shield spot and sitting on top of the West. But it was so early in the season, but you just wanted to believe that it was a good thing. So I'm wondering, is the Galaxy regressing towards the mean? Or is this just who they are? Because something that we've been saying is, well, when they have more games together and they finally start to gel and they finally start to put the pieces together, then they're going to look like such a better team. So if this is the good position that they're in, imagine when they start putting things together. But I think you can argue that they've actually played a little bit, results wise, gotten worse results with more reps as the season has gone on. So what does that say? Maybe it's just kind of balanced out that this is who they are. Maybe, and it's still far too early. Maybe Paintsell and Peck are not the game changers that we thought that they're going to be, that they looked like they were going to be the killer peas and just, rip teams to shreds. Maybe they are inconsistent and you're going to have 2 good games and 2 bad games. And then you're going to have another good 3-game streak. And then maybe they'll have another, 2 or 3 games where they fall asleep. And maybe this is just who they are. And the Galaxy are going to sit around this 3rd, 4th, 5th spot. And that's just going to be where this team is. And so maybe it's just a reset or an expectation, adjustment based on what they're doing. But I think, we're feeling good about ourselves. It was, with the changes that were happening with the front office and the new DPs, and then we'll talk about salaries in terms of not wasting money on overhyped players that are not going to give you the results that you want. I think there was such this positive swing in energy that we wanted it to be so much better than what it was, that now I think we're coming back down to earth a little bit. And that's not a bad thing either, because it also helps you understand your expectation that, I'm not going to expect, a 10-goal season from Peck. Now kind of seeing what I've seen from him with the scouting report, kind of looking like a little Efra Alvarez light, with the going to the left foot here. And so now the expectations aren't as high, but I'm not going to be as disappointed when you're not up there to the top. So it's just that balance. That's kind of where I've landed after this game.
I think that maybe that's almost an overreaction, though. You're 1 point from second place. So, if you get 1 more point somewhere and, you could be in second place. So if you're placing it on the standings, right, of where they are, then I think, people panic, oh, they're in 5th place. Yeah, they're 1 point out of second place. If anybody had 1 more point, they'd be in second place. What I'm trying to say is the standings aren't going to matter a lot for probably the next 10, 12 games, only because I think you're going to see everybody sort of jump around and go. I don't see clear paths. I will also say that the difficulty of playing on the road is going to catch you eventually, right? And so I think that being there unbalanced in what we've been seeing, I think that we could definitely see that perhaps the regression is more just a balance of things that are happening on the road. The Galaxy haven't had that home game. They haven't played 2 consecutive home. They haven't had 2 consecutive home games yet.
They had mentioned that Vanny had kind of have said that. And let me say this also, that while it could feel like an overreaction in terms of not being as high on this team, I will say that I have enjoyed watching them play. And even on the games where they don't get the results, they're in the position to make things happen. They're in the position to steal points in almost every single one of these games. I think the Austin game was probably the only game where I felt like there was just no way back from that. Yeah, they laid an egg in that game. And there was, different reasons for that. But it seems like they've put themselves in position. So what I'm saying is, if you can put yourself in positions but you can't finish, that maybe that's just who you are. But of course, there's always the opportunity that they're in the position. So if it, could be. When I was predicting the San Jose blowout, I was like, they're having all these chances, they're just not putting them away. One of these games is going to be the 5-goal blowout, the 4-goal blowout, and so that's why I predicted it. And so some days that's going to happen, and then some days it's just not going to work out where those chances are not going to be finished.
Adam, $5 super chat. Guys, is there a reason to be concerned for the Galaxy to be winless in 3 games since the San Jose game? I'm not overly concerned. I don't know. Are you concerned that they're winless? Now,
I don't like it.
They're winless in 4 games, right? Winless in 4 games is what it is, but they only have 1 loss during that time too, right?
Unbeaten in 3.
Unbeaten in 3, technically. Winless in 4. Ooh, exciting. All it takes is 1 win, and all of a sudden they're undefeated in the last 5. You can always play those games.
No losses in the last 4. Yeah,
that's right. That type of thing.
They win this next one.
So that's something. Steven, $5 super chat. The mini South Korea versus Japan rivalry between Yamane Yoshida and Sangbin Lee was a battle, but I'm glad my countrymen didn't score against us. It was. I do like seeing more of the Japan and Asian names and like stuff sort of coming into Major League Soccer. I think it's been an untapped market for a little while, and I'm glad. By the way.
I think the J League and the K League is a good comp for MLS in terms of getting players over who can be impactful in the league. So yeah, I would agree. It's cool to see a lot of that start to happen. Yeah, shout out to all my Koreans out there who, but again, not when Minnesota has them on their team.
There is an announcement. The LA Galaxy will be having, and this is why we're talking about Miki Yamane and Maya Yoshida. The LA Galaxy will be having a signing at the Japangelis store in Little Tokyo on Sunday, May 26th from 1 to 2:30 p.m. with Maya, with Miki. Let's go for a little side note here because we're going to get to the second half of the Minnesota
gear
game.
Looks great. Yeah.
Okay. One is, gear. Top of the lake. But if you get a chance to go and meet 2 of my favorite players to talk to, you should go do this. Maya Yoshida is a gentleman, a scholar, and just a really nice, fun guy too. Like
class
whenever you talk, just top class, easy to respect him, easy to talk to, really fun. I have been told, and I've only experienced this in little bits, but even from the little bits I've experienced, I'm going to tell you this: Miki Yamane is like a character. He is a fun dude to hang out around. You will want to be there and meet him. He's learning English, and I think the more he learns English, the funnier he's going. He's like a guy who's going to learn the jokes first, just that way he can be funny.
Do you know what won me over with Miki Yamane is when he posted pictures of him in Nashville with the cowboy hat. So he's walking around, Broadway, but just in his Galaxy, jumpsuit with the cowboy, like just having the time of his life. Like, I am in America, in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm going to put the cowboy hat on. And that's when okay, this guy knows a thing or two. So yeah, I agree with you. I see that peek through.
So again, Sunday, May 26th, 1 to 2:30 p.m. with Maya and Miki at the Japangelis store in Little Tokyo. Be there, be square. All right.
Speaking of,
yes,
a little mini shout out mid-show as well to our good friend Nelson. If you're on the Discord, Nelson now has his own channel called Creative Retail. So again, if you're not already on the Discord, get on the Discord. Everyone's active. A lot of lively Galaxy conversation happening in there. And there's also a direct conduit in terms of what you want to see in merch, ideas, feedback, all those things. And Nelson was gracious enough to kind of agree to have the own channel, one, so it doesn't get lost and all of kind of the Galaxy talk in between, but also it's just a nice little place where you can go, hey, this is what's happening. He puts out little updates, all those, kind of sneak peek type of things. If you're in the Discord, if that's happening there as well. So again, just want to give a little shout out to the world famous Nelson out there.
It's a vital resource in what we're doing. I definitely would suggest going to the Discord. Always a good time. All right, let's talk second half, because that's where everything really happens in this. Let's see. Let's go into this and sort of understand that Fagundes had to come in for an injured Joseph Paintsel, right? So Paintsel sort of came up. Now, Greg Vandy classified the injury as, I think, more precautionary. He said he felt tightness in his hamstring. I would be surprised if Joseph Paintsel plays on Saturday. I don't think there's any need for him to play because you're going to rest him. You want him ready for the home games that are coming up. There's time to get him a break. I think Joseph Paintsel gets shut down for this. And so you now will have to adjust and play without him. By the way, the first game that he will miss. That's my guess.
I would guess he definitely doesn't start, but I think he suits up on the bench. He seems like a guy who I don't imagine he gets put on the shelf. He doesn't let that happen.
Yeah, it's one of those though. You're on turf. You just played. Like there's some. I talked to
Charlotte turf. Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
That
changes everything.
I will say I talked to Paintsel. I think we talked about this last podcast, but I talked to him and I asked him what the biggest difference for everything, and he was talking about the travel, right? Mm-hmm. The travel is is a lot for him right now, a lot to adjust and a lot to think. So with the tightness in the hamstring, if it's even a little injured and not just tightness, because there was sort of iffy whether or not they were going to sub or not. But anyway, he comes out, Fagundes goes on. All right, so the LA Galaxy make that sub there. Then it was Miguel Berry coming off in the 60th minute. That's the second sub window for the LA Galaxy. So now they have
That was after his back pass, by the way.
That was, yeah.
Back pass of the season.
That is a GIF I'd be okay with, just over and over again. I'll be happy to watch that. If you didn't see it, he went deep into the box and the backhill pass that he lined up and studied acutely and was ready to fire. It's like he telegraphed it so much, everybody knew it was coming, and then he fired it to absolutely nobody.
Yeah, that one was that was like a jaw dropper because he's like, okay, he's moving forward, he's getting in the box. What's going to happen? You may bounce it off a defender. Are we going to take a shot? Oh, we're going to the back pass to absolutely nobody within a 25 yard radius. So I think that was time. That was when he knew it was time to get the hook and kind of pull him off the field.
Now, it certainly was, I think it was more than planned that Joveljic was going to come on in the 60th minute. That seemed like that was planned already. So the Paintsil Fagundes sub is one they didn't plan on making. When you don't plan on making it, that means it takes a window away from it. So with two windows being used there, the Galaxy losing 1-0 at halftime, Galaxy come out in the second half. By the way, from the first kick, for the most part, I thought the Galaxy were in a much better offensive shape in what they were trying to do from that second half. So you could already see it. Then when Paintsil came off and Fagundes slotted in, again, there was a little pickup in momentum. Joveljic comes on the 60th, game on, time to roll. His first touch of the ball, he ends up scoring. That was the assist from Gabriel Peck, who then went over to the right-hand side. And by the way, there were switches between Peck and Paintsil on the right, trying to figure out where the best one. And they did try the overload on the right in the first half as well. That didn't seem to work as much. And I don't think Paintsil is as comfortable in that position whenever you're looking at it. So we saw that. Joveljic comes on, Galaxy able to score. Fagundes gets the next goal on a great piece of work. Just overall, just some really nice passing. Again, assists on both of these. One on the hockey assist for Ricky Puig.
Yeah, I saw that someone credited him with 2 assists. I'd still mark that down as 1 assist for Puig, but absolutely he deserves credit for creating it. Yeah, I know technically on the stats.
Yes, technically in stats, he gets 2, right? And so he comes on and he does that. So now the Galaxy are winning 2-1 in a position where they very much look like they weren't even going to score a goal. They are now winning 2-1. We go into, I guess, the controversial part of this, which is the LA Galaxy then in the 76th and 77th minute make their final change. Now, I would like to remind everybody, this is it. You can't sub one guy. You have to sub whoever else you're doing for the rest of the game. This is your last chance to do it. Talking to Greg Vanney, and let's talk about it. You had Aude come in for Nelson. Nelson was one of the switch outs, but we probably haven't talked about. By the way, thought he was very decent defensively, gives you nothing going forward. He's not supposed to give you anything forward. He is a defensive player. Yes.
You want to hear the best compliment you can give about Nelson?
I did
not notice him
right
at all. So what you don't want the Miguel Berry factor where you have everyone ready to rip your head off, but you also, but you want a little bit of the glory, but then you have Nelson right in the middle. I didn't even know he was on the field. So again, I'm going to take that as a compliment or play that as a compliment in his favor that he didn't do anything to put the Galaxy in a bad position.
So, yeah, and so Nelson comes off, Aude comes on. Aude, there's a reason, and I think there's a really smart reason that you're actually making these subs and how they're being made, right? Surreal comes on, Ricky Puig comes off. People clutched their chest, couldn't believe it. One of your guys that is your biggest creative playmaker, doesn't play any amount of defense whatsoever, and I criticized them in the first half for not playing any defense. Comes on, then Gabriel Peck comes off, and Jalen Neal comes on. Now, effectively, what the Galaxy get is a 5-man back line with Aude, Caceres, Yoshida, Neal, and Yamane. Now, if you look at the graphic on the screen, this is more or less how they lined up. I want to be very clear because everybody thinks the Galaxy went super defensive on this, with Yamane on the outside on the right-hand side, with Aude on the outside on the left-hand side, with Fagundes, Delgado, and Dayon into that center. This is not a super defensive set, but what it is, and what Greg Vanney mentioned in the post, was he was trying to take away some of the half spaces in front of that center back line. And then he knew, and he even calls this out in the press conference, he goes, with Fagundes, you got a striker and 2 really good midfielders in there. He goes, plus your outside back guys. He goes, I didn't think, he's sort of hinting, this is not solely a defensive move.
Yeah, someone like Aude is and Yamane also, their defense in their position, that's what goes on the stat sheet when you sub them in. But have you watched Aude play all season? He loves to sprint forward. He loves to move forward. So I understand this. I also, and I'll be honest, if with the 77th minute, you're up 2-1 away,
right,
parking the bus that's not the worst thing in the world. If you wanted to put 5 defenders in there and just sit back and take on pressure and let them come at you, I don't think that's a terrible strategy. So I understand it didn't work out for the Galaxy. Minnesota ended up equalizing, and so you're going to have the pitchforks come out.
But it wasn't a result of the subs, though.
I don't think so.
That's where I said that. For so many times I hear that Greg Vanney waits too long to make subs. Well, in this case, his hand was forced because he only had one more window. He wanted to try to do something. The other part of this that nobody ever considers, and I thought it was an interesting point to bring up in the postgame, was Greg Vanney says Ricky Puig has been dealing with knocks. He's been dealing. Remember the guy who didn't play any of the preseason because he was injured? Yeah. That guy. Ricky Puig has been dealing with knocks. He was worried about the amount of minutes that he's putting in. He wants to still play him against Charlotte. He's like, okay, now we're in a position where probably worst case scenario we draw this game, right? Worst case scenario, I think this has to be a consideration when you're making this. Worst case scenario, we draw this game. I'm putting in a defensive set that should be a little better on set pieces because I have taller guys in there. I have more bodies. I'm going to get more bodies into the box because they're going to be throwing people forward. Somebody was sort of making the argument, Eric, I think that, by taking Puig off, you let Minnesota control the game too much, right? And I said, did you watch the rest of that game? Outside of that set piece that happened, like a minute and a half, 2 minutes after these subs happen, which is the danger time. That's whenever nobody's settled. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, the Galaxy controlled that last half. And they had the better of the offensive chances between Charlotte and them. I was shocked.
And they had chances towards the end. They held the possession, and they dictated how that game ended as well. Someone mentioned it in the chat about comparing Aguirre and Cerrillo in terms of why Aguirre didn't come in. That's you talk about the defensive substitutions, and the argument all season long has been, well, Cerrillo looked really good in those opening games. Brugman isn't, the same guy that he was last season. Maybe he's taken a step back. I think Cerrillo is someone who had a little bit of a letdown in this game. I think he has shown that he can be better, and maybe it just was he came in too late, couldn't find his rhythm, couldn't kind of get meshing with the team. So I'm not gonna slam the guy, but he's someone who probably could have played a little bit better and had a little bit of impact with his minutes that he got on the field. So I think, to me, that made a case for Brugman to kind of appreciate all the little things that he does as the Puig guardian. And then the other player who was not subbed off, but I want to give a shout out to, because we haven't done that yet, is Caceres. Just, we know what he was coming off with the pain injections, and with Garces coming in and Neil finally getting healthy. You're thinking, well, is this it? Is this kind of the we're sending Caceres out to pasture here? But I think he showed kind of a warrior-like performance. He had 8 clearances. He was a beast back there. So I think he's someone who deserves a little shout out also.
Yeah, I think that's right. So
because I don't think he was the issue on the goals either. If
you talk to Dejan Joveljic, or you listen to his end press conference there, whenever I asked about something, he started off with saying, he went around my question to say, first of all, I want to say, emphatically, I am not happy with the 1 point. I thought we should have had it. And then he went and laid the blame on himself. And quite honestly, he could be right. Because he had a one-on-one chance, and he said, I make that 10 out of 10 times. That's what he said. I make that 10 out of 10 times. He goes, why I didn't hit that to the near post where it was open, I don't know. He goes, but I make that 10 out of 10 times. That was Dejan Joveljic. He had it. Diego Fagundes had a chance in there.
My only issue with him saying 10 out of 10 is
he missed it.
He should say, I make that 9 out of 10. I don't want to be a stickler. We saw you do one of them, and you missed one of them.
And you missed, so it can't be 10
it can't be 10 out of 10. No, maybe, so that's all I'm going to say.
Maybe 19 out of 20. Maybe 19. Maybe you need to go up a little. 99 out of 100. Right. We saw the one. Right?
Yeah, when you lose the 2 out of 3, best of 7. Okay, best out of 11. We'll just keep it going. The other thing, something is in the air also this week in terms of having opportunities to clinch a game or clinch a title with Tottenham, with Son not finishing his chance to hand over Arsenal the title. So I'm sure Sophie knows a thing or two about missing a one-on-one with the keeper.
But the bottom line is the Galaxy had 2 substitutes that came in and scored goals. Now, Eric, trivia time. Here we go. You didn't know this was coming. Nobody in the chat room knows this is coming.
Okay, lightning round, right?
When was the last time 2 substitutes scored in the same game for the LA Galaxy? You're never going to get... This is one that you wouldn't, but go ahead, try.
Am I supposed to narrow it down to a year?
I
Two
don't.
subs.
Sure, go ahead. Give me
Okay,
a year.
yeah, I know. Well, is it the Zlatan game? Does Zlatan debut?
No,
Zlatan was a sub and then
Yeah.
wasn't. No, that wasn't it.
no, wasn't
Was
it.
it before then
there are
or after then?
I'm going to tell you something that's crazy. I'm going to narrow it down for you. In the what are we on 29 years of MLS soccer? Is that what it is? Right,
Sounds about right.
29 years for the LA Galaxy in existence. In the 29 years the LA Galaxy have been in existence, this has happened 4 times, including one of those is this last time. Not one of those is before 2022.
Oh wow! So last year was 3 of them.
It's so you had 2022. It was this is great. People, I'm glad that everybody's sort of looking. The last one was in May 29, 2022, Austin versus Austin FC. You had Dejan Joveljic and Efrain Alvarez.
Okay.
Okay. 5/31, 2023, Real Salt Lake, Memo Rodriguez and Tyler Boyd.
Wow.
I know. You would never gotten any of these,
How
right?
quickly you forget Memo Rodriguez and Tyler Boyd, right?
Right. September 24th, 2023, Dejan Joveljic and Michael Barrios.
Okay.
Okay. And then this last one. So of the 4, this was Diego Fagundes and Dejan Joveljic. Of the 4, Dejan Joveljic has scored in 3 of them.
Yeah, that's kind of incredible. Also, super sub. We this is his role.
This is nuts. I was talking to the Galaxy about this because I was trying to get the stat right, and so we were going over stuff. I have no idea that it was sort of one of those. The other thing is that Ricky Puig did get credited for 2 assists. And one of those things, by the way, Austin Fagundes and Barrios, Comets 96 had a pretty good shout on one of them there for sure. Ricky Puig got credited with 2 assists. When was the last time an LA Galaxy player has recorded 2 assists in back-to-back regular season matches? Can you name the last player to do it outside of Ricky Puig?
It's not going to be a popular opinion.
No.
I think back-to-back assists. Is it Giovanni Dos Santos? He
No.
feels like someone who would have
No.
had back-to-back assists.
But 2018, a player in 2018 with a little bit of a French flair there.
I was going to say, was it Alessandrini?
It was Alessandrini.
Okay.
The guy who did it before him was Landon Donovan. He did it twice.
Okay. That makes sense.
In 2014, 8/27, 2014 to 9/5, 2014. He actually did it in 3 consecutive games, by the way. 3 consecutive games with multiple assists.
And what were the years on that?
2014. 2014, okay? You had Landon Donovan, who did it in 2007. He did consecutive guns. And then Mauricio Cienfuegos, who did it in 1998.
That
All
also
right?
makes sense.
Okay.
That checks out. That all checks out.
That all checks? All right.
And I'll say this. I was thinking about this earlier, and I might as well share it. You know, what better place than a Galaxy podcast to share your Galaxy thoughts?
Right.
But with the Barry and Joveljic issue, in terms of depth and worrying about, you know, where the goals are going to come from, if the goals aren't going to come from Dejan Joveljic and Barry is starting in these games, then, you know, you feel like all hope is lost. I think back to those 2014, 2012, 2010, those Landon Donovan years. If Robbie Keane was not on the field, you can count on Landon Donovan to step up, Mike McGee to step up.
Yep.
You know, these other players were going to pick up the slack. Someone like Alan Gordon there's a reason he's so beloved, because he's someone who you knew you weren't going to rely on as a 34 game starting caliber, you know, striker, but he was going to come in and make your moments. If he was going to start a game, you know, you can live with it, understanding that you still had guys, like Landon Donovan and the supporting cast to help him out to finish. And I think that's the part where I'm going to pull back some of my claws on Barry here, is that, okay, if Joveljic isn't going to start these games and you do have to live with starting, you know, Fagundes or Barry up there, at some point, you know, Puig, Paintsil, Peck, those Ps need to step up, and they need to be the ones who pick up that slack. And I think that's something that needs to be said, because when you think back at those teams, when you didn't have your number one option, or your number one option was not having those games, you can't get mad at the bench player who would come in to solve those problems. It needs to be those starting caliber players who you're paying the big bucks to step up and add a little bit extra to those teams. So that's just something that was on my mind earlier today, that maybe I shouldn't be, so mean to our subs who are coming in.
Maybe. Or maybe not. I think
or maybe
fine
I should.
either way. Yeah,
or after
either way.
that back pass. I'm going to show the back pass again.
Yeah, exactly. If you see the back pass, you understand. So that get to the set piece goal. Now, by the way, Greg Vanny reminded me in the post game Both goals did come off set pieces. Second phase set piece on the first one. Wonder goal from there. I mean, the fact that Minnesota had all this XG and really the 2 goals they scored were, one was a wonder goal and one was, a really sharp angle back post sort of, header. I'm not saying that was the easier of the 2 for sure.
And
but
the first one also pretty clear goal.
Yeah.
After you say that, looking forward, I mean,
I thought it was a goal whenever he put it. I was like, they're going to count
that long.
Yeah.
I was like, are we going to get away with it here? We know they look at these, right? I think if we didn't have VAR, we probably could have gotten away with that.
Yeah. So second goal. So you get there. So the Galaxy put in all these defenders. They do all this stuff, and then they still get beat. And by the way, you can look at McCarthy. I think you should. I think he's too soft in those positions. He gets crowded. He gets bumped. He complains. There's nothing. I watched that replay. There was nothing there. I couldn't make that argument. And VAR didn't want to make that argument either. They're like, no, get out of here with that. What I did see though is that both Neil and Yoshida getting beat on a back post. That's ridiculous, right? The Galaxy. And it's crazy to think the Galaxy have one of the better defenses if you and by the way, statistically one of the better defenses if you take away their set pieces, right? You
said it, I think, in one of your tweets. If you take away the finishing, you take away the goals against, the Galaxy are doing really fantastic.
Right.
This Galaxy defense, if you take away this goals against thing,
it's
set
fine.
pieces, they're fantastic.
But from the run of play, they're a very good run of play defense, right?
My eyes see the same thing.
And it's just so the set pieces dog them. Sophie asking Greg Vanny after the game whether or not he would think about bringing a set piece coach. Greg emphatic no on that, which to be honest with you, you could be like, I don't think he had to be no like that. I would criticize Greg Vanny on that. It would have been like, no, obviously we consider a lot of things. I could answer that question a lot better than no. It was very emphatic.
It was a tough look, especially if you had something to back it up, but like you're leaking goals on set pieces. So saying no, you're not. It feels a little bit like I'm going to fold my arms. No, can't do that.
I don't care if that he shouldn't care if he uses a magic 8-ball at this point, right? Like it doesn't matter. Like I don't care if you're throwing out a 21-sided die in order to figure out how it works. Something needs to work. Something has to change.
Something needs to change. And I'll say this, and I don't know if this is where you're going with Yoshida being beat. I think at some point, a little bit of that conversation, as much as a class act as Yoshida is, he's also similar to McCarthy, where there's a little bit of a pattern
of complaining,
of the complaining for the the pushes against. I think we've seen a pattern on a lot of these set piece goals. Yoshida seems to be the one who's not either in the right position or not challenging or not getting there, and I think that it's difficult because he's the captain, and so at some point, is there going to be a rotation where Yoshida is not in there? And then we can see, okay, with Yoshida not in the one of the 2 center back positions, how do the Galaxy look on center pieces? I'm just going to throw that out there. Right. As much as complimentary as we are, I think he is one of the weak links on these set pieces.
Well, yeah. I mean, listen, anybody is. I mean, it's funny because Pottermus in the chat says, anyone else go into panic mode when we get a corner kick against us? I'll tell you who does, Pottermus. The LA Galaxy go into panic mode. It is now a mental thing more than it is a physical thing.
It becomes, eats upon itself for sure.
I would say you need to overcorrect this. And what I mean is you might need to give up some penalty kicks by knocking people over in the box a little bit. I would rather you attack some of these. That way you are more physical than you need to be and give up some penalty kicks than just keep letting the same thing happen over and over again. And there has to be an adjustment. And Greg Vanny, by the way, biggest red flag. You want to talk about something that Vanny could crow about being a defensive coach, is having a good defensive team. I think he has it if he can figure out the set piece stuff, but by God, they haven't figured out the set piece stuff. And it may not be on him, Eric. It may be the players. He may be telling them what to do, and they're not doing it. And that's what sucks about being a coach sometimes. You're going to get fired either way, Greg.
It's year 3. If they're not listening after year 3, then something's got to change. If it's not you, it's me. It's one of those things. The other thing that I'll throw out there is with you saying being more aggressive on these corners. And why I was more critical of McCarthy is I've seen goalkeepers come out and straight up just punch strikers in the face and no call because they get the benefit of the doubt. So you even saying like, well, you might have to give away some penalties. I don't think anyone is going to give a goalkeeper a penalty coming out and going for the ball. They get the benefit of the doubt, the advantage. Now grabbing, if Yoshida or someone were to, wrap around a guy, that's a different thing. But maybe you like your chances on a penalty better than giving a guy a free header. Maybe Maybe it gives you a better chance by giving the penalty,
Ma-
but at least it shows you something. So
Maya
that's
should
fine.
know. Maya should know they're not calling that because he's been wrapped up about 6 or 7 times in the box this year with no calls. By the way, let's get to some super chats. Pablo, $5 super chat, had goosebumps being back at the digs on Saturday night. Recently moved back to SoCal from Arizona. Go Sun Devils. Go Sun Devils, Pablo. Pablo, fellow Sun Devil
Shout out to you, Pablo.
in there. Thank you, bud. Appreciate that. Popo Zhao, $5 super chat. How does the Galaxy approach the summer window in regards to a striker and who is available? Availability will not be known here for a little while. How they approach it, I think they need a backup striker. I don't know that they need a primary striker. Joveljic seems to be that guy. He's got 7 goals on the year. Whenever he plays, the Galaxy are so much better. So much better.
Well, and thinking back to us saying that he was involved in how many times have 2 subs scored, and Joveljic was 3 out of those 4.
Right.
So remember, his start on this team was the super sub role. If they can get a Joveljic 2.0, that's all they need. It doesn't need to be, a big name market like they got, across town, as much as I feel like that might be a good move, because that guy knows how to bury the
Certainly.
ball. But I think if you just get someone maybe who's one of those, mid-European leagues who has been banging in goals, those identified similar to Joveljic, and he becomes Joveljic too. Imagine subbing Joveljic off and bring someone equal to that level who just hasn't earned that title of the starting striker yet. And so I think that's what they need. It doesn't need to be a big, flashy move. We've seen Antoine Guesman get thrown around there and some other big names. It can be. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'm not a hater of the big names, but I think you do what's worked. And someone like Dejan Joveljic has worked. Someone like, Paintsil and Peck, I think you're looking for that same vein. I don't think we're reverting back. I think the formula is there, and you just have to lean into it. And strikers, if a striker doesn't come in the summer, I'd be shocked, even if it's within league.
Yeah, I don't know. We really haven't got to approach the Galaxy on that yet, only because summer is a little ways away still. So we sort of have to wait for that. Let's get over some of the accolades to get to Dejan Joveljic with his 100th appearance across all competitions for the LA Galaxy. Scored his 30th career goal. Unofficially, he scored 31 career goals for the LA Galaxy. Funny enough, 42 goal contributions, 30 goals, 12 assists in 100 games played, and 46 starts. Pretty impressive whenever you look at what Joveljic has been able to do. The fun part about this and the funny part about this was he started his career as a substitute in a game against Minnesota in Minnesota. And so he was able to bring it full circle in the 100th, which is kind of fun. So congratulations to him. He was pretty excited about that. Just sort of pumped up. Listen, Dejan is not one of those guys who's like, you're going to say, oh man, he was so excited about that. You could see that it meant something to him. It was important to him. Some of the other things we need to talk about is Gaston Brugman. I thought Brugman had a bad first half. I thought it had a really excellent second half, and I'm right there. I'll clap and applaud. By the way, the Galaxy had a really bad first half, and I thought they had a really good second half. Right, so. Yeah. One of those. He notched an assist. Gaston Brugman notched an assist, completed 62 of 72 passes, 86.1%, won 9 of 16 duels, 7 possessions, and 2 tackles, registered 2 interceptions, was fouled 3 times in the Galaxy's 2-2 draw against Minnesota. Man, it's fun to watch him be able to step up whenever Ricky goes off, too. I actually kind of enjoy that a little bit, so fun to watch there. And then we talked about Ricky Puig as well, notched 2 assists for a second consecutive match. And ranks first in MLS this season with 3 multi-assist games. All right. So, by the way, Landon Donovan did 3 games in a row, multiple assists. So Ricky Puig with 2 assists against Charlotte would tie him for the Galaxy record there of 3 multi-goal assists in 3 games.
I think we could do it. Yeah, I'm crossing my fingers.
I don't think it's impossible. Let's get to, I was going to go over some other stuff, but let's get to some salary stuff because that's really what I think everybody wants to talk about. Some stuff we can sort of glance over and look at. The Galaxy's entire payroll right now, $17.931 million, $17.9 million in guaranteed salary. Here's the really important part that I sort of wanted to point out. The Galaxy's wage bill has decreased by more than 20%.
That's crazy.
Now, you look at LAFC also in that, but LAFC is going to bring on a pretty big summer signing, and so that I would expect that their wage bill goes the opposite direction whenever that happens. The Galaxy shouldn't add too much in wages whenever we look at it. So, what do you take of salaries and all that stuff?
That chart was one of my favorite ones that I saw because it did show the change in the salary cap. We were so many people were banging our heads against the wall last season with Chicharito and with Douglas Costa just the amount of salary that was going in, and that you were just not getting the return on investment in terms of output on the field. So I think that last chart where it showed that the Galaxy has completely flipped it is on the far end of the spectrum in terms of all those teams and having the net move in their favor. I think that's something that we all were happy about, and just to see it compared to the other teams. And then when you see where these teams are landing in the standings, that also makes you feel really good, because oftentimes, and again, the Galaxy still land towards the top in terms of total salary spend within the league. But when you think about the last few seasons where the salary has been top 2, top 3, and depending on certain categories like DP, they were number 1 in some of these categories also, and then finishing in 13th place, battling for an 8th or 9th playoff spot, it just didn't seem worth it with the amount of money being spent. So it just finally feels like the amount of money that's being spent is being spent in a wise way, and that it's effective for the on-field results. And I think it's just validating all of those things that we've been seeing in the offseason and then this first, the first third of the way through.
Yeah, it is. They were sort of talking about, Messi and how much money he's making, and how basically he's making more money than the guaranteed compensation totals of 25 MLS rosters. So
including the Galaxy, right? If they're at 17,
they're at 17. Yeah,
he's got us beat.
Yeah. Only the 20 million that he's making. 20.4 million plus a bunch of other stuff as well. League pass sales, I think jersey sales from Adidas and stuff like that. So there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. Joseph Paintsel, the LA Galaxy's highest paid player, coming in at $3.358 million. Now, the other thing the wage bill doesn't really tell you is about transfers, and we know the Galaxy spent about $20 million in transfers. So
and so going back, I'm gonna make sure I correct myself on that chart that I was just saying how good it was that the Galaxy are completely flipped. What's not accounted in that negative spend is the amount that you spend on transfer fees. So you do spend a lot on transfers to get those players in. So that's wage bill, which is a great thing. But if you're going to get players who are going to be productive on the field, the trade-off is you are going to have to spend somewhere, and I think they did it on the transfer fee, which was not included there.
Right. Only 3 players have earned more during their MLS careers than Messi has in 2 seasons. Michael Bradley with the $44 million. Insigne is going to get $44 million. Josie Altidore, $42 million. The ones I wanted to highlight was David Beckham in there at 36. You had Javier Hernandez at 26.8. The next point of stuff I should warn is a trigger warning.
Yeah.
And so I just want everybody.
A lot of familiar names here.
There's a lot of familiar names, but there's also going to be a lot of money associated with that as well. So Javier Hernandez, $26.8 million made from the LA Galaxy during his time there. You go down to Robbie Keane, $23.6. That's fine. Nobody will begrudge Robbie Keane for making over the course of Beckham,
over the course of years that they were there,
right?
And then what you got out of it, I think it's well worth it.
Right, absolutely. And then the last one, which is definitely a trigger warning, Giovanni Dos Santos, $21.5 million that he made off of the LA Galaxy during that. I thought that was an interesting chart to bring back everybody's fear of Giovanni Dos Santos. Just looking at where everybody sort of lines up and where the LA Galaxy are sort of lining up, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th, 8th. Eighth highest paid roster in there. The one that was really surprising to me, Nashville, being as high as they are. But again, it doesn't account for transfer fees. And whenever you look at their DPs, there's some balance there. So Nashville not as far as they are. Nashville getting rid of their coach, first MLS coach to be fired, Gary Smith, out at Nashville.
It's a rough day to lose your job when those salaries numbers become available. Yeah,
maybe they knew. It was funny because I should credit the Athletic on this with Jeff Ruder and Tom Bogert combining on all of these charts and doing all the reporting on this stuff. And they called like this salary release day is the best and worst day of the year for like agents and all that stuff. And it's like, hey, this guy's the same. Can you imagine a player going, I play better than that guy. He's making $200,000 more than me. I need a new contract.
It's the best day for podcasters because then we get to scroll through this list and say, all right, our DP makes this much money. Let's look around the league. Who could we have got for a lower price that's having a much better season? It's a very easy thing for us to do from this perspective.
The big numbers for the LA Galaxy, obviously Paintsel at 3.1, Peck at 1.6. I don't think we were surprised. Let's do guaranteed salary. So 3.3 for Paintsel, 2.4 for Peck, 2.4 for Puig. I still think with bonuses and everything, he's going to be about 3. Yes.
That was my question because he renegotiated, correct, or signed a new deal. So I think this does not include that because this seems pretty in line with last season. It matches up. So I think whatever new deal this may not have been flagged any time when these were reported.
And I don't know. And by the way, we haven't had an announcement from the Galaxy that he signed a new deal. We don't know when that goes into effect. It could come into effect after the season, right?
Yeah.
So we don't know the answers
extension,
to some of that, right? Maybe we can get some clarification from the Galaxy whenever they get around to it. Gaston Brugman in there at $1.4 million, right? Diego Fagundes. This is the one that hurts a little bit just because you have a guy who's coming off the bench, but also I think we need to make this okay. A guy who's coming off the bench making 1.3 is able to impact games like Diego Fagundes. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you're producing, yeah, that's worth 1.3 million. It is to me, I have no issue with that at all. I think he's someone who understands the league and understands what it takes and understands his role in this team. And of course, when you bring in DPs, in your position, there's going to be the interest to play them. But I think if you drop too far off, I mean, we've seen it how many times, and we're going to keep beating the Barry horse here, but when you drop off so steep, then you're in a really bad situation. So at some point you are going to need to pay a starting level player to be your player number 12, your player number 13. And you're just going to have to live with that because that's what you need to be successful.
Maya Yoshida in at 893,000. You have Mark Delgado in there at 876. Dejan Jovic 683. Miki Yamane at 656. 616 for... Let's see. Oh, that was Yamane. 616. Caceres was 656. Then you had Yamane at 616. Surreal at 414. Let's see. I'm trying to think of something.
That was the surprising one to me. Surreal.
He got a big raise.
A big bump. Yeah.
Yeah. About 300,000. He was making 130 something, I think, last year, that type of thing. And so he's up to the 414. So Alex Ruiz was looking at that increase and sort of saying, listen, by the way, the Galaxy are paying him like more or less of a starter, and
that's
they
what I'm saying.
expect him to be.
He fits in that Fagundes tier.
Yeah, absolutely. John Nelson in there at 291,000. I don't think there's anything major in all these. Your buddy Miguel Berry 181. It's more than I thought it would be. But I'm not surprised because I know he had a higher contract at some of the other teams that he was at, so it doesn't surprise me.
You skipped someone in there as well, McCarthy at 290.
Yep.
Yeah,
290 for the 430, I think, for Bond or something like that.
That's exactly what I was going to say. For everyone who is saying, well, I don't see a big difference between Bond and McCarthy.
There's the difference.
Why did we? There's the difference right there.
Yep.
You just people are going to love this. We got rid of Bond so you can have McCarthy and Miguel Berry.
There you go.
You saved a Miguel Berry in there. That's the difference.
It was one of the things I should mention is Chris Mavinga is listed in the MLS pool, and he's making like 6. Let's see, I wrote it down on one of these pieces of paper because I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." Just not on any of the ones that are right around me. Great. Chris Mavinga is in the MLS pool. I think he was like at 6 something, and I'm not sure who's picking up that salary right now.
I was going to say, if Chris Mavinga is in the MLS pool still collecting a salary, he is a revelation on Twitter, on X recently. He seems to be a LA Galaxy tweeting machine. Oh, okay. So I have to tip my cap, literally tip my cap to Chris Mavinga. He is living the dream, getting paid a salary to tweet about the LA Galaxy. Kudos to you, Chris Mavinga.
Yep.
You did it. Congratulations. You have gamed the system. Well done.
So salary numbers really interesting overall, and interesting in terms of like the general stuff. The average MLS salary $594,390 in 2024. That's up 12.1% from $530,262 in 2023. A significant bump, 12.1%.
Breaking news. Breaking news.
Yes.
Chris Mavinga, guaranteed compensation in the MLS pool, $702,500.
There you go. Yep.
There it is.
Yeah.
So again, now you're really living the dream, Chris Mavinga. Well done.
Yeah, by the way, he's like, I'm still part of you guys. I'm still part of you guys. Like he feels like he's part of the team. It's kind of cool.
Well,
I'm like,
I was gonna say, if he's getting paid, he kind of is.
I mean, I would do the same thing to the LA Galaxy if they want to pay me $702,000. I will tweet like nonstop. I will hit my tweet limit every day. Like it'll be up hard against that limit. Just let me know.
Like I said, a pub crawl shirt. That's all I need. Much cheaper than $700K. I
think so. All right, so that's the salary stuff there. Again, we can dive into this a little deeper whenever we want to. I think with the packed. By the way, big surprise, they put it out on a week where there's like multiple games all over the place. This is almost an afterthought for everything. Let's look at the standings in the Eastern Conference.
There's one more chart that I just would like you to show, just because the the title is going to drive everyone crazy. It's from Cabral to Messi.
Yes.
And it's just that it hurts so much just to see that as a headline of a chart. So fun times.
Yeah, basically it's saying what percentage of total salary expenditure each MLS team commits to its top earner. Well, the top earner is Colorado is Cabral. So 11.9%. The LA Galaxy very much in the center of that chart at 18.7 with Joseph Paintsill, and then they have Miami with almost 50% of the entire expenditure goes to Miami. By the way, same thing with Toronto and Insigne, right? So that's and I don't know if there's a good balance in that or not. It doesn't matter whenever it comes to designated players. They're not part of the salary cap. So taking their spending versus the overall spending of you can look at some of the leagues, some of the teams and how much they spend. And it's like, well, really all it is like one designated player difference. Like if you spend and go out and get a top designated player, if Colorado goes out and gets a, Charlotte is at 14.5. If they go out and get a $6 million designated player, which by the way, you're like, okay, that's a lot, but it's not like it's a tremendous amount. You're like, oh, it's not that much, right? That would put them basically in the top 5 in spending. It's one player away in a lot of these cases of what you're trying to do because it's Major League Soccer and designated players take up so much money.
And it truly is. And one Lionel Messi from just doubling everyone else's total. That's all the difference.
That's all it
takes there. And in terms of, is it worth it? Is it not worth it? Why do we do this? It's to win, right? It's to get cups and win competitions. So I think whatever that value is, if you're willing to pay it to be in a CONCACAF Champions Cup, to be in the MLS Cup playoff race, to be in these conversations, it's worth it. So I think if where you get uneasy and unsettled is when you're paying all that money and you're finishing 13th. That's where it doesn't feel good. So it all comes to what you're getting at results wise. That's when it becomes worth it or not worth it.
We look at the standings here in the Eastern Conference. Miami at the top, 28 points, 27 points for Cincinnati, 23 points for New York, 20 for New York City. Charlotte in at 5th with 20 points there in that Eastern Conference. We go over to the Western Conference. Salt Lake at 25, Minnesota at 21, LAFC at 21, Colorado at 21, LA Galaxy at 21, Austin at 19. All right, all bunched up, just like we told you. The Galaxy currently in 8th in the Supporters' Shield. Not too far back, 7 points back from a Miami team who has played one more game than the LA Galaxy. We go to the Galaxy schedule and where we line up with that. The Galaxy, 3 ties in a row to start off. 3 ties in a row to start off May. Draw. Now head off to Charlotte to play against Charlotte at 4:30 p.m. That game will be on Saturday on MLS Season Pass. They have the 2 home games coming up afterwards, right? So this is the big home stand.
Yeah, home stand. And it's a midweek game in there too.
There's going to be a lot of pressure on the LA Galaxy in these 2 games to get 6 points because these are teams that are further down, Houston and Dallas, in the standings. You're at home. You should beat them. And we all know the LA Galaxy have trouble beating both of those teams historically.
Yeah, I was going to say the Galaxy versus the team from Texas at home. Cover your eyes, avert your gaze, because it does not go well when that happens. But you're right. I think having those games close to each other can be a positive also, because it's like, okay, we're home, we're sleeping in our own bed. We found a rhythm in the Houston game, so that's just going to carry over and go well. So I think it can be a good thing, but I think it can start with the Charlotte game. I think we're going to talk about previewing, looking at the other roster. But when you look at it, again, maybe you haven't been thrilled with the results, but we're unbeaten in May, undefeated. No one has beat the Galaxy in May. So again, that you got to hang your hat on that.
Hey, take the positivity when you can. That's what I'm going to tell you. The LA Galaxy will head to Charlotte. In fact, are in Charlotte already. They stayed out on the road. We know that they trained in Minnesota on the AM. They didn't really train because it was a recovery day, but they did some recovery. They hopped on a plane. They flew to Charlotte. They're in Charlotte. They will train tomorrow, and then they have a game at 4:30 p.m. That's 7:30 p.m. on the East Coast against the LA Galaxy. This game on MLS Season Pass. We talked about it. Charlotte is 5th in that Eastern Conference. The LA Galaxy 5th in the Western Conference as it stands, right? So a lot of stuff to sort of watch in terms of where the Galaxy are coming at, where Charlotte are coming at. And then this weird Charlotte lineup Eric, that we were like, who are these guys, right?
What team is this? Is this a creative? Is this like a Pro Evolution Soccer where they didn't have the FIFA contract and they needed to make up the names? Shout out to Menendez, and Gimeles.
Yep.
I didn't recognize a lot of these names here, and it's not to be disrespectful. It's just we follow the West Coast teams a little bit more, and these aren't just household names that are happening. In Charlotte, those names that you did recognize previously, like a Swiderski and things like that, they're not involved in the lineup here. So that's the thing, not to be disrespectful, but it's not the names that you say, okay, it's going to strike fear into you. And when you dig a little bit deeper, you look at their stats, Charlotte only has 14 goals for. Where their positive is they only have 13 goals against. So they have the +1 goal differential, where you look at a Galaxy team who has 25 goals for. So again, they're not a team that's a high scoring team. Their high scorer is Patrick Ajimanes.
Ajimong.
Sorry.
Yes. No, it's okay. I just listened to the replay.
I think of Obama Yang when I see it, so I try to make it that way. But he's a 2023 super draft pick. So again, that's kind of a dying breed, having your super draft pick being your leading scorer, even though it is only 3 goals. So I think it's something where you need to look out for the defense. But when you look at the roster, it doesn't look like something that should scare you. It seems like there are points available in this game.
This is a Charlotte team now coming on 3 wins in a row, right? So 3 wins in a row. Now, they beat Portland at home. They beat Nashville at home. And then they went on the road and beat Chicago. I'm not going to say that Portland hasn't been a dumpster fire, which if you watched any of the San Jose game, you watched the first half, you would say dumpster fire. And then you might ask your friend Steven if he wanted to come coach the team. Steven, you want to coach this team? So if you look at that Portland game in there, a 2-0 win. Then the Nashville game. Nashville has been a struggler. 1-0 win. Chicago, 1-0 win. These guys, 3 straight shutouts for Charlotte. That's not a bad look for them. So
it's not nothing.
No, and it should mean something. I would just question the favorable matchups at home that they got, and then the weaker team on the road in Chicago.
That's where I'm going with. It's Portland and Nashville. They've been struggling. You see where they are in the standings, and the same thing with Chicago. That's why you don't exactly take Charlotte's on a heater, even though they are coming in with 3 wins. And there's nothing about, the disappointment that I've been coming away with from these Galaxy games to feel good about it. But I just do. It's one of those weird vibes things. It
is. I would say us trying to simplify this would be a bad thing too, right? Let's not simplify. Charlotte is a good team. They are much better than they were, I think, last year. I think they're solid defensively. I think they're going to cause some problems. They have had some problems with some better teams. I think the speed of the LA Galaxy, if they can use it and utilize it, will cause Charlotte's backline problems. I think they're better whenever they can keep people in front of them. But I think that going the other way, Charlotte has a lot of speed going forward, as well. So this is a game for me the Galaxy got to keep people in front of, and I think the Galaxy will get enough of the ball in this game. I never worry about the Galaxy getting the ball, quite honestly. So,
and what makes me say this also is you do look to one of Charlotte's losses on the season is against Minnesota, a team that we just saw the Galaxy play, who on the counterattack, we saw how effective they can be. And I think when the Galaxy, can turn that on, they have that play in their playbook. I think you see a team like Minnesota go to Bank of America Stadium and win there 3-0. I think the Galaxy could very much fit into that Minnesota mold and kind of be able to walk away with 3 points as well.
Adam, $5 super chat. Have you guys heard of Ross Smith and Tony Husband, announcers this week for the Galaxy? I didn't hear that, but I usually hear most of these guys. Like if I hear their voice, I'll be like, oh yeah, I know that person.
Yeah,
so.
It's funny. I look into this now because the last time that this happened, I believe it was not the last time because I've been looking at it the last few weeks, but when we heard about the Vancouver game and I didn't quite recognize the names, and then once the game started going, I was like, oh, these guys are a little bit homerish to Vancouver. What's going on here? So it made me dig a little bit deeper, and it turns out one of them was a former Whitecaps announcer, and it's okay. That's why they were assigned to it. So I did the same thing. I saw, Tony Husband, Ross Smith. I don't quite recognize these names. Let me go take a look. Maybe they're former Charlotte announcers, and they're not. Tony Husband used to work with Nashville SC from 2020 to 2022, and then Ross Smith was working with Portland Timber. So again. totally unbiased. Seems like a random hodgepodge of announcers for this game. So they're on the early slate as well. So it doesn't seem like we're getting primetime number one level. Again, no disrespect to those guys as I disrespect them.
Right. Absolutely. 100%. MLS, by the way, please fix your possession stats. That way we can see what the overall possession is. Like, it shouldn't be that hard. I should be able to find out that the Galaxy have, a 62% overall average possession and that Charlotte has a 33%. And then that tells me that Charlotte's a counterattacking team and I can take a look at that. Just fix your stats. You got like 90% of the way there and you can't seem to get it across the line. So remove head, fix stats. That's what I suggest. All right. Also, by the way, if there's another quick restart that doesn't get caught on camera, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah,
have
we're
somebody
riot
ready
at
for
Apple
it.
headquarters. Yeah, we got to go. We got to go protest.
This has to end. This is name any other major sport where they would miss like seconds of the ball being in play because they were busy trying to show you the 7th replay of something that wasn't clear nor obvious. And by the way, that would be
it's baseball. The answer is baseball.
Well, there's a lot of downtime in baseball. All right, you can figure it out. Miss Pink, $20 super chat. Thank you for that. Love you guys. Thank you for all you do. Our favorite podcast, Miss Pink and Eric. Thank you. Is that you again? Nope, it's a different spelling.
No, she's got an Eric on her side. Shout out to Miss
Okay.
Pink, and I always appreciate the love on social media there.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Aaron, who is way behind and has just joined us, $5 super chat, behind about 30 minutes, so maybe you spoke about it. Paints a one-on-one with the goalie early and a phantom handball called terrible. I thought it was a handball, so I don't really know. Listen, there's lots of stuff. Somebody asked earlier why the corner kick that Minnesota eventually scored on wasn't called offside. It was because Jalen Neal was keeping the guy on. It looked like perhaps he was going to be offside, but it actually, when you saw the replay, I saw Jalen Neal. And then Adam, $2 super chat. Any idea who starts alongside Yoshida on the turf? Depends on what Caceres feels like, I think. I wouldn't mind him starting again. Jalen Neal, though, probably could get the start in this. They may be rotating back and forth in order to keep the minutes down on Caceres. And when you look at his injuries, maybe it's not the best thing for him to play on turf, so maybe Neal does.
That's what I was thinking. Is Neal's injury doesn't seem like a turf aggravated style injury, so it feels like Neal got the rest in this game, and he's probably going to be the one who's rotated in to start. But I'm just going to ask again, Garces, at what point are we going to see him integrated? And maybe it is too soon. Maybe they're giving him a week to kind of travel with the team and figure things out. But I think they've given up goals in these situations that maybe you do need to bring him in and just throw a different look out there, because other teams do seem to have a bit of a game plan and the tape is out on the Galaxy. So maybe they need to throw a little bit of a wild card out there with Garces.
Wasn't on the bench. Yeah, and by the way, you have a whole bunch of defenders right now. So like there's guys who probably travel who aren't on the bench, right? That happens, especially on the longer road trip. So I imagine he's out there. Don't know his status. I think that whenever you finally get the Galaxy a home, that you'll have a better idea of what that is and sort of how that goes. So we'll take a look at that. Let's see. When you look at this, neither team has ever defended their home turf. In these, there's one.
That is a
one win for Charlotte,
stat,
and one win for the Galaxy. Both of them winning on the road. Whenever that happened. So we sit there. Eric, you have our D ratings for today.
I do have the D ratings. Before I do that, and I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, I got jams in the chat, even though it's not a super chat.
Yes.
It says Mitrovic in goal. I've mentioned it. When is the time to pull the trigger? Maybe, you let in 4 goals in the last 2 games, resting 3 games in a week. Maybe we see Mitrovic with a start. Is that crazy? Is that insane?
Yeah, right now I think it is.
Okay, thank you. Just want to be told that.
Ratings. No, well, I the only reason I say that is I feel like being next to the Galaxy and seeing that you sort of pick up when the momentum is sort of going. I don't feel like the momentum is there to sort of cause that shift yet.
To kill it. And to be fair, McCarthy had some solid saves.
Outstanding
outside of the mistake.
Yeah.
So D ratings. D ratings likes to favor the home team. I say that every time as my precursor. They have Charlotte FC was a 46.7% chance to win. And then the Galaxy has a 27.9% chance to win, and then a 25.4% chance to draw. So there's actually more than a 50% chance for the Galaxy to get a point here. So again, when you look at that perspective, while D rating skews in favor of the home team here, they kind of like what the Galaxy have going on compared to Charlotte.
Right.
And it probably has to do with, goal scoring and their ability to kind of work in possession and score a lot of goals. So I think while Charlotte is favored, and they're also favored on the money line as well, Charlotte is plus 124, and the Galaxy are plus 210. and then a draw plus 265. So again, a little bit closer there. Still technically Charlotte with in favor of that, but I think plus 210 for the LA Galaxy. I feel like, again, not a financial advisor, I feel like that's a little bit tasty. You can make some money on that and feel good about it. Again, given nothing about the first halves that the Galaxy have played and these last two games should give me any type of belief or any type of confidence, but just something feels like it's going to go the Galaxy's way. And then when you look at the over-under, while Charlotte doesn't score a lot of goals, the over-under is set at 3 plus. So again, 3 plus is at 100, under 3 is at minus 120. So 3 goals, we say it every time. It's always going to land around 3 goals.
Yeah.
But with Charlotte not being a high-scoring team and the
Take
Galaxy
the under?
being the away team, I don't know. I feel like the under might be safe.
I would like to warn everybody and remind everybody that playing on the road in Major League Soccer is extremely difficult. Playing on the road at the end of 3 games in 1 week, all the way across the country, is extremely difficult.
Did we see Delgado in those last minutes in the Minnesota game?
Yeah, you see the legs? Yeah.
He looked like he took a tranquilizer dart.
Looked like me trying to run out there with by the way, being fully rested, having a good night's sleep and trying to run. There's going to be a point, and the Galaxy have made a habit of this, which is trying to come back and trying to do these things. That takes a tremendous amount of work to be able to come back and do these things. To come back from being down is difficult, and I think if the Galaxy put themselves in a position to allow Charlotte to score first, that this game will be over this time. I don't think they're going to have the legs. I would suggest that the Galaxy would very much need to be up 2-0 in the 60th minute in order for them to really have a chance of holding on, because I think those legs are going to get tired. I think the minutes that have been adding up this is going to be a game that is significantly impacted by the travel and the minutes that they have played. Greg Vanney will, I think, rotate up to a certain point. I don't know what that is. I think Joveljic might be back and starting. I think some of the guys that you got, some of the guys that you gave rest to might be able to come back and do some things. So I think there's chances for the Galaxy to rotate and use the depth that I think that they have to give themselves a good chance at it. Having said that, it's a tall order. This is a very, very tall order to do. Not saying it's impossible, but if you're going to do it, it has to be a specific type of game. Score early, hold everybody off. That's me. So I'm saying the Galaxy lose 2-1.
Okay, you're leading us right up to the line. Guaranteed to be wrong prediction. They lose 2-1.
Yes, correct.
That's where we landed. All right. Yeah. So I'm going to go for, again, I don't know what it is. I think the results during the past 2 games, they've had a legit chance to steal 3 points as poorly as they've played. And I think that says something as well. And I think here where you say, okay, we dropped points earlier, we have an opportunity to play free. We know we're not dropping points against a Western Conference team, so it's not a 6-point game. It's not someone who's going to extend their streak on us. So I don't also think that Charlotte has the same firepower that RSL and Minnesota has, so that worry about them scoring first isn't as high for me as it was against those other teams. So I feel like the Galaxy can play this in their favor. I think Joveljic does get the start. I think he can get an early goal, and I think the Galaxy could win this 3-1. I'm going to say 3-1. I'm going to say they totally flip it on its head. Last time the Galaxy were in Charlotte, a left-footed player hit an absolute banger. Who's our left-footed guy, Mr. Gabriel Peck? What's not to say this is his game to finally, to get his banger that he's been waiting for. He's had some interestingly scored goals with the way he's put them away. I think it's time for him to see the big bombasso that we've been waiting for.
I see. It's funny for me. I think if you want to play Peck, you have to get him running downhill, right? You have to get him in behind. You have to get him moving towards the goal. I think if you do that, you're fine. Asking him to take people one-on-one all the time is not going to be his best game plan. I think
he hasn't done it. He hasn't showed that level yet.
Yeah. So for me, I am a big fan of getting Gabriel Peck in behind and around those corners. You do that and you do it. I think Paintsel doesn't play, so I think trying to put Fagundes in there, maybe you can move. Maybe you're going to move Peck over to the right-hand side where I think he's a little bit better. That means that Fagundes will come in on the left-hand side, right? You're playing on turf. There's going to be a lot of difficulty here for the LA Galaxy to rotate and then still maintain some of the injuries that I think they're going to have. So Philip, by the way, calling a Barry backheel goal, right? Definitely coming in, in the 70th.
I was going to say, I wore the Greg Vanney inspired outfit. If he scores a backheel goal, I feel like there needs to be some type of bet or something paid off, because that's something that I'd be happy to see happen, but definitely not likely.
All right. Anything else you want to get to before we get on out of here?
No, I think you are ready. Your voice is ready to call it. So let's get out of here.
One more thing. I just want to remind you that, again, on Sunday, May 26th from 1 to 2:30 p.m. At the Japangelis store in Little Tokyo with Maya Yoshida and Miki Yamane. They're signing there, so make sure you head on down there. I'm sure the LA Galaxy will release some further details, but wanted to make sure you guys are at least, if not first, among the leaders of knowing that what you will be doing on that day. So hopefully you'll get down there and everything will be wonderful and you get to meet some two awesome guys. All right. I think that about does us for tonight. As you mentioned, voice is almost gone. Cough has sort of just subsided for a second. So Eric, tell people where they can find you and we'll get on out of here.
All right, stay hydrated, Josh. Get healthy. Hope you feel better. As always, you can find me on everything at HammerEV9. So Twitter and X, Instagram, TikTok, all the fun things at HammerEV and the number 9.
If you're looking for me on Twitter and X, it's at Guesman at Galaxy Podcast. Head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. Of course, you can find all of our podcasts there. Look for Catamount's wonderful articles out there as well. So cornerofthegalaxy.com, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, all those fun places. Anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find Corner of the Galaxy. Tell your friends. We're back. We'll be back on Monday as the LA Galaxy wrap up their road trip. We'll be able to recap the game against Charlotte. We'll get you ready for another busy week coming up for the LA Galaxy. For Mr. Eric, the Portuguese Hammer Vieira, I'm Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening, you've been watching to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye.